of Ready for Red 2020. My name is Jason Chinnick, and I'm the CEO of Ducati North America, and it's an honor to welcome you guys here tonight. Actually, Chicago in the Midwest is really where I cut my teeth with Ducati, for those of you guys that know. I started off with, actually at a dealership many years ago in Colorado, but when I first came to work for Ducati officially many years ago, I was a regional manager for the Midwest. And originally planned on living in Chicago, but my wife actually got a job in Minneapolis. It's okay. And I just spent my entire time when I was in the Midwest on the road. But Chicago is my second home because of the food, the music, and of course the people. So it's great for me to be able to be here, to be able to kick this off tonight. And we've got a lot of exciting things to tell you, and different from last year, it's not just going to be talking about bikes, because Ducati is more than just a motorcycle. You guys know that Ducati is a brand. And as a brand, it means we offer a whole world of experiences. It's 360 degrees. It's not just the bike. The bike is the key to the door, if you will. It's the idea is to awaken something in you that you may or may not have known that you had inside of you. And that's what's beautiful about our motorcycles, is that it does that. It takes something that you have that maybe is either dormant or you forgot you had, maybe if you're a returning rider and you hop on a motorcycle, and specifically Ducati, and that experience just brings something to life. So we'll talk a little bit about what sort of things we've got planned as well. But before we get started with the brand of Ducati, we're going to kick it off with Scrambler. And just a few notes about Scrambler. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but Scrambler brand started in 1962. And this was actually a bike that was built specifically for the U.S. market. The intention was for it to be something that was really easy, and the name Scrambler came from that idea of mixing things up. Fortunately, we did not trademark the name in the U.S. back then, so it kind of got taken by anybody that wanted, but that's okay. And then in 2014, we brought out the modern Scrambler. And the idea was this wasn't a vintage bike. This was a modern interpretation of the original Scrambler itself. And then we saw the different versions of the Scrambler grow over the years, and introducing the 62 as a 400cc, an entry into it, a couple other models. And then in 2017 is where we came out with some pretty cool new ones, and my personal favorite, the Desert Sled, which I have in my garage that I ride the hell out of. I love that bike. And then as we moved on, we brought in the 1100 in 2018, a bit more of a refined style that we actually unveiled here a couple years ago in Chicago. And then as we saw into 2019, we saw a revision of the lineup as well, which allowed us to introduce Coring ABS on all of the models. So not only is the bike fun to ride, but it has increased safety and performance for those people that are actually learning to ride as well. So what's on the horizon for 2020? Well, we have the Scrambler Icon Dark, where the idea here is that you have a bare bones, stripped down Scrambler that gives you a great base to build something off of at a really attractive price point. But there's also some things that we showed earlier this year, late last year, some concepts at Icon. Unfortunately, these bikes are all what we call maquettes. So they're basically made out of balsa wood and clay. And so we can't ship them. We've shipped some of these bikes in the past, if you remember from some of the motorcycle shows, that unfortunately don't fare too well. But these concepts have had a tremendous response. And if you take a look at this bike, I mean, it's like basically a desert sled with 17-inch wheels and a supermoto setup. So something really fun, hooligan to ride in town. And then the other one, obviously, this Desert X concept, which is really cool. And you can see that it took a bit of inspirations from what was done with the old Elephant and the Lucky Explorer in those days of where the bike was rated to car. So there's no confirmation yet on the production of these things being built, but there's a lot of excitement behind it. And so if I was a vet man, I'd say that you're pretty safe to say that there's some enthusiasm that will actually make these things happen. And we've got a lot more that will be coming, but it's a little early for me to speak about this. So at the beginning of February, you'll hear some news about some other things that are in the pipeline. And I'm sure our team back in Bologna will trickle some things out over the next couple of weeks as well for Scrambler. Now let's jump into the world of Ducati, but I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit different when we think about two wheels with Ducati. And that's this. And so a lot of people are like, what, Ducati's getting into bicycles? And actually, if you know Ducati's history, one of the things that we did is the Cucciolo, which is that 50cc motor, which basically translates to puppy, would bolt up to a bicycle that was utilized for transportation after World War II. And the concept is this is a much more modern interpretation of that idea. And this is an e-mountain bike. And our mission is actually to get people excited and have great experiences in the world of two wheels. So we don't just limit it to motorcycles. And we have a quick video here that will show you a little bit of what this thing is capable of doing. So something that's known also is a lot of motorcycle athletes, what do they do for training? They bike, whether it be road or mountain. I myself am an avid mountain biker. I've actually not been an e-biker up until recently. Is it something that's been interesting because I usually end up trying to ride with people that are way better than me. And as a result, I'm always playing catch up. So the opportunity with an e-bike is actually you still exert the same level of, you still exert the energy and all that, but you can actually get a lot more out of it. And when you look at the mountain bike here, this is actually the MiG RR, and we partner with a company called TOK, T-H-O-K. And there's a really cool motorcycle connection behind there as well. The owners of the company, one of them is actually a guy named Stefano Migliorini, which the MiG stands for Migliorini, and he's actually the Enduro champion of Italy. But the other partner is another gentleman named Livio Suppo. Anybody follow Ducati Corsa, Casey Stoner days, MotoGP? So he's actually the other part of that organization. So there's a really cool motorcycle connection to this as well. If you get a chance to get up close and see it, we have 3 different models that are coming out with it. The MiG RR, as you see here, which will be basically the leader of the bunch. And then the S, which is a bit more of a trail-oriented bike. And then something kind of fun for running around town and all this is actually a scrambler version with a fixed rear suspension and a front fork. With these really cool Pirelli balloon tires and so on. So take a look at these. They're actually going to have them in North America, and I think they're going to ride around April. But it should be a really exciting thing for us to do, and also help bring people maybe outside of the world of motorcycling that are in the world of bicycling into motorcycling as well through this product. So, moving on to the world of Ducati. This year we saw in 2019 the launch of the Diablo 1260, and we had a tremendous success with the bike. In fact, with that 1260 motor, which is just an incredible machine of torque, we had great sales success, both globally and locally. And this year we refined the look to be able to come up to bring a flat black version of the S, of the standard, but we also are bringing in the S in Ducati red. And you'll see it behind you guys here. We actually have it out on display. And this thing has some really nice attention to detail and some nice touches that highlight the design of the bike in red, which we generally can never go wrong bringing something out in Ducati red. Something else that I want to point out is that we've got a couple of the Ducati Owners Clubs here tonight. Guys, raise your hands if you're here from the DOCs. Come on. Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for your support here. The DOCs are actually if you're not part of a DOC, it's one of the most exciting, active groups of riders. And these guys are they're hitting me up tonight about doing rides in India and in Mexico and some crazy good ideas, but also a lot of just camaraderie with the clubs. And what's great is that the DOCs integrate with our local dealers as well. So if you're not part of one and it's something that you're interested in, check out our website at Ducati.com. You can find out more information about the DOCs there. So the Multistrada, it's amazing. There you go. 16 years that the Multistrada has come out, and late last year we hit over 100,000 global sales of this bike. And I remember when the Multistrada 1000 came out. We're no stranger to dirt. I mean, Not besides the Scrambler, there was the Mountaineer. There were lots of Ducatis in the 60s that were both on-road oriented as well. And this year, in 2020, we're actually at the Quail Motorsports Gathering. We're going to celebrate, let's call it the Explorer, the adventure side of Ducati, which will go into the history of all of these older bikes that actually Ducati was not necessarily ever really known for, but to tell the story of where we're at and where we've got all the way up to this point. And we took all of this into what we identify as the final Multistrada 1260 that we're going to see in production for this next year out of the S version. And the intention, we know that with these bikes, there's not only a good comfort and load capacity, we have sport-inspired suspension, wheels and brakes and tires on the bikes, and then really some cool cutting-edge technology with a variable timing on the motorcycle that allows you to have a very smooth delivery of power and torque throughout the entire RPM range. And one of the things that maybe a lot of you don't know, compared to the very first Multistrada, we had the service intervals of those Multistradas, which used to be one of those things that would plague Ducati for years, was 6,000 miles. So every 6,000 miles you had to have your valves inspected, your belts checked, etc., etc. With the current generation of Multistrada, we've actually tripled that to 18,000 miles. Strange thing is this happened about 4 or 5 years ago, but it's been the best kept secret. So it's one of those things as an owner, I mean, most people don't even hit 18,000 miles on bikes. I say most people, but there's plenty of people that ride them. So it's one of those things that you can just ride and not worry about it. That's, you bring it in once a year, just have a quick once over, but that big service actually hits most people about 3 years or so. So we took all of that into this version of Multistrada 1260S Grand Touring, which we've unveiled in this really cool livery just for this year. That actually has some nice highlights with fog lights that come standard on the motorcycle, the touring pack, which is the heated grip center stand and saddlebags, and then also the electric fuel cap, so you keep your key in your pocket, you pop the cap when you're at the gas station without having to stick it in, and then also the tire pressure monitoring system, which is really great if you're going to do long distance road trips, and you can actually not even have to get off the bike to know where your tire pressure is at. So this bike has already started riding, and I think we've even got one here tonight. Looking at the DRE, which is actually the Ducati riding experiences, in 2019 we launched the very first Ducati riding experience in Euro Academy in North America. And we took a little bit of a different approach because we couldn't set something up where we had a school for 9 months out of the year. So we had 1 week that we took at the beginning of June in Sundance, Utah. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to those mountains at this time of year, but it's absolutely gorgeous. And this is a shot from it. And we brought our lead instructor from the DREs, Beppe Golini. Anybody who know Beppe, he does a lot of the press launches, but he's also a Perry Dakar rider, or ran it for 6 or 7 years. And so you can imagine after the day of riding and the wine is flowing, there's some great stories that come out. But we put together a really short video that gives you guys a snapshot of what we did this last year. So you got a little bit of an idea of what happens, but basically you have anywhere from a day to a 2-day course where you spend the first part of the day learning some of the basic skills of how to ride a bike like this, a big enduro style motorcycle off-road. And all the way from how to pick up a bike that you've dropped, and if you've always heard of that thing, you got to put your back up against it and walk it up, wrong. You'll learn the right way to do it. And actually, one of the keys with enduro riding is you never ride alone. You ride with a buddy. And you have them help you pick it up so that you don't end up pulling your back. No one has to try and be macho when you're sitting there trying to lift up a motorcycle like that. But anyway, we're bringing the DRE Enduro Academy back again this year. We're going to have one standard session and one intensivo session at the beginning of June. And for any of those that are attending the Ready for Red Tour, we're going to send out an email communication to you guys first before we open it to the public. And the reason why is because our classrooms are tiny. I mean, they're small. We have 12 students per session. And out of 2 sessions, that means there's 24 people in the world that are going to be able to attend this over the course of those few days. And the idea behind this is that it's a very high quality, high touch experience, and so you really learn how to ride a bike in that sort of environment. And it's also a primer. It's a primer for you to go off and do the things that maybe you didn't know you were capable of doing. So moving on to the next bike, the Panigale V2. Panigale V2 is probably one of the bikes I'm personally most excited about this year because I'm getting myself, I just got measured for a suit yesterday. It's going to be a year of track for me. And this is a bike that I'm really excited about being able to take on the track. So the Panigale V2, you just started riding, is an incredibly compact bike. This is the follow-up to the 959. There's some significant differences on the bike as well, though. So not only does it have this very compact size, but you have the same design aesthetics that you saw when we unveiled the Panigale V4, which includes a full LED headlight package and that almost, let's say, sinister look from the front of the bike that means business. We've also brought the single-sided swing arm back to this model from the 959, having the dual-sided swing arm. Why? Because it looks great. I mean, ultimately, that's the reason why. And we've also found a way with the similar motor to basically increase the horsepower by 5 horsepower and the torque as well. But what's more important, and you can already start reading it because we did the press launch in, I think it was early December, you can start reading the articles and talking about how usable and how friendly and how fun this motorcycle is. And for a lot of people that are just getting used to riding on the track, most people, you're never going to even touch the limits of this bike. You're just going to get out there and have fun and rarely find yourself in over your head. Big part of it is because of a lot of the technology that we've added in terms of the performance is with the intention of improving safety. And that includes the electronics package that's largely come from the Panigale V4 with the ABS cornering, the traction control, the wheelie control, the quick shift up and down, and the engine braking control. All of that has actually been brought over to this bike to make this a really, really capable bike on the track. And you can see the final figures here for the V2 as well. So in summary, really, it's total control on the track day, and this is something that you can have a lot of fun with, like I said, finding yourself over your head, very confidence-inspiring, but also it's something that's manageable on the road as well. So if you want to be able to ride on the road, it's actually without feeling like you've got to wrestle it the entire time. It's comfortable and it's easy to handle as well. So moving on from the Panigale V2, something that we started years ago. In fact, I was cleaning out my garage this last Sunday and I found the poster from the very first Ducati Revs event that we did in North America, which was 2005. I hosted in Mid-Ohio. And we started there, and then we ended up doing these Revs event, which is basically a Ducati sanctioned track day, working with the local dealers and with the clubs, and we bring personalities in. And as an example, last year we worked a lot with Jake Zemke, which has some experience in riding on the track. This year we have a very, very strong calendar that's already being developed. And one of the bits of news that I could share with you is that in many cases we're partnering with some race organizers that are hosting a race, and we're trying to follow up with the track event on the day after. And so there's a lot of activities, and we definitely plan. I know that earlier last year I think we were in Grattan. We have some things that are planned for the Midwest where we're going to have at least 1 or 2 of the Ducati Revs track days in the Midwest as well. Hopefully we might see something at Audubon this year. So the Panigale V4. A couple years ago when we unveiled this, actually here in Chicago as well, we didn't know how the market was going to respond, because we stepped away from a familiarity that we had for all these years of the Twin. What's really exciting to be able to share with you is that the Panigale V4 has actually been the best-selling superbike in the world, which is incredible. Yes, I mean, like, that's for the engineers and the designers and the whole team that decided to take a risk here. The best-selling superbike in the world. And in North America, the U.S. specifically, it's the #1 selling superbike in the U.S. for 2 years running. And I mean, I remember the days where you just pick one of, whether it be Suzuki GSXR or whatever it was, they would sell 4, 5, 6, 7 times the volume. But the fact that we've stayed true to who we are on this bike, we've actually achieved this, which is it's really a testament to what has been put into this. But instead of resting on our laurels and just ending up with the best-selling superbike in the world and patting ourselves on the back, our engineers don't rest. They know that once you get that, it's really easy to be knocked down. So these guys went back to the drawing board and they took this idea of, hey, we know the bike is excellent performance, effort reduction, emotion, etc. And they went back and they said, we need to look at how we can improve something that's already damn good as it is. So the new Panigale V4 is referred to as the science of speed. And these guys attack all of these different areas, from the aerodynamics, the chassis setup, the electronics suite, and then the mapping for the ride-by-wire. And to give you an idea, I mean, the very first thing is something that you've seen already because it was introduced in the Panigale V4, and that's a completely new aerodynamics package that's on the bike. But why that's important is because that aerodynamics package allows for minimal amount of drag, and it improves the downforce on the front end of the motorcycle as well. And you can see this from this animation of actually how it works as it would be going through fluid. And the benefit of this is it actually reduces the front wheel floating at high speeds. So under hard acceleration, you know that front wheel gets that little float or that drift or wheelie, whatever you want to call it. The way that modern motorcycles have found a way to manage that is through electronics intervention. But when you have the electronics intervene, what do you do when you're cutting power? So this allows that to happen in a very natural way, where the amount of throttle that you're giving and the amount of, well, actually the faster you go, the more downforce you have on the front end, which actually creates up to 60 foot-pounds of torque at 167 miles an hour. So it's designed with that in mind. So imagine you putting 60 pounds of weight in the front of the bike at that speed to keep the front end down. So it reduces, obviously, the tendency to wheelie unnecessarily. You can still turn the wheelie control off. And it provides greater stability under braking. Under hard deceleration, what happens is that you've ever got that greasy front wheel feeling? You're hard decelerating, your front end starts to slip and slide a little bit. This actually keeps it tracked and planted, just like a wing. We've also tuned the entire front frame, which is taken from what we learned with the Panigale V4R. And this actually not only reduces the weight of the bike, it increases torsional stiffness and braking stiffness, and it gives better front end feel and wear of the front tire. And this is something that some of the feedback that we received from the Panigale V4 in the first couple of years of its testing and the ride and the different reviews that we received, this has been a point of improvement. And so when we put it on the V4R, we decided it was making its way to this bike as well. And there's a ton of things that we can go over about the bike, because there's so much that's been done. But I just wanted to highlight on a couple of those obvious things. I mean, the new high center of gravity, the distribution of weight on the bike, the higher chain force angle. I mean, there's so many things that have been done on this bike that have actually been a significant improvement. So while on the outside it looks like it's just aerodynamics, there's a lot more that meets the eye on the bike. So the power and the torque, 214 horsepower. We know that we break over 230 horsepower with the full Acro system on it as well. So this is the Panigale lineup for 2020, which is a pretty badass picture right there. I think somebody's looking at what their garage is going to be for this next year. But one thing about these motorcycles is we know that the best place to take these things out to ride is at the tracks. So this next year we also have, as we've had with COTA, Every year we're at the MotoGP. We're going to be at Ducati Island again this year. We're actually just locked everything down a couple days ago, and within the next week or two, Phil? I don't know where you're at. You can confirm. Our marketing director, Phil's here, but in the next week or so, we'll be launching the ticket packages for Circuit of the Americas Ducati Island. And so please stay tuned to when that ends up being announced. But also, we're planning on attending Moto America races this year as well. And the idea behind it is, you guys are probably aware, we had a privateer that kind of came to us last minute, kind of Wyman at the beginning of last year, that's like, hey, I got this crazy idea, I want to race the V4R. We air freighted him a couple V4Rs over for the first 2 bikes off the production line. Really, the first 2 bikes that were destined for America, we shipped him over because he needed it for development and testing. And last year was clearly a development year. He went into it knowing that the bike was not designed to ride on American tracks. In fact, if you guys have ever ridden Road America, you know that there's no other track really like that anywhere else in the world, where you have to build gas tanks just to make the race because of the fuel consumption and the size of that place. So it was a big year of development, but we plan on attending, we haven't confirmed all of it, many of the Moto America races, where we're going to have hospitality set up, potentially do some other activities. Obviously, all of you guys are invited in the clubs to really bring some excitement back to what's happening in the Superbike Racing Series, because now we got somebody to cheer for. But there's also a class that is looking like it may be opening up to seeing the Panigale V4 out there. So stay tuned. We've been in discussions with a couple different teams over the last few weeks that are very interested. So there might be more than one Ducati out there in Superbike trim racing in the Moto America Series this year. And if they're out there, I expect us to be out there in force. And I mean us, that's all of us. So we welcome you guys there. So this here is what we refer to as the fight formula. So you take the Desmos Vici Stradale engine, you add biplane wings, the V4 electronic suite, a high handlebar, remove the fairing, is what you need that for, and you have 208 horsepower. I'll let the video speak for itself. So ladies and gentlemen, the Streetfighter V4. A little less elegant. Come on, man. So there she is. This bike has been a fun one for the team to develop. In fact, there's a film coming out this next summer, Free Guy, yes, exactly, that we actually built one of these about a year ago in our offices in Mountain View. Because we had the opportunity to do this film, and the bike is a hero of the film, and it's a hero of Robert Reynolds' character. And actually back then it didn't have wings. And we were playing with but our engineers were playing with the different geometry, the suspension and the swing arm to try and find that best fit. So it's interesting to see it was not part of the original concept. In fact, when you see the movie, you'll see that it actually doesn't have the wings. Because when we put the bike together at that time, it was all rapid prototyping parts. But let's talk about the design of the bike, because actually, I think that the first thing you generally look at when you see a bike is you see its face, just like when you look at anybody in the eyes. And the inspiration of the design of the headlight, while you can see a little nod to the past of the previous generation Streetfighter, it was actually the Joker. In fact, you see this image of the Joker, and you can see how it evolved into what was the headlight, which ended up being the final headlight on the motorcycle itself. So we start on the Panigale with the Panigale V4 rolling chassis. So basically what we're saying is this is a Panigale V4 with the bodywork removed. And we added the biplane wings. And these wings provide a very similar amount of downforce as well. It has the same effect. But since we don't have the upper front fairing, there's a different application that we have in order to be able to address that same challenge. But also, as opposed to having clip-on handlebars, you know your weight is, you're sitting a little bit more upright, so there's less of your own weight on the front end of the motorcycle. So you need that downforce in order to keep that front end down. The engine is exactly the same engine that's in the Panigale V4. It's the Desmo Sedici Stradale engine. You might ask, why does it deliver power differently? Well, the idea behind this is that this is a bike that was designed and intended mainly for use in the street. So we actually delivered, not only does it deliver the 208 horsepower, which is a little bit down on what's compared to the standard V4, but it delivers an increase in torque and the torque at a much more linear delivery of torque. And you can even see in comparison the torque at the rear wheel and third gear between the two models. You can see that Streetfighter has a significant amount of torque through that speed range where you're actually going to be riding this motorcycle. When you're finding yourself in the corners, you're not going to want to rev it to get to where the power is. You want it to be there through the corners. Our team has actually worked very carefully on what they call the ergonomic triangle and researched a lot of other models and actually made sure that this is something that's comfortable to ride for longer distances as well. By no means is it any sort of sport touring motorcycle, but it takes a lot of pressure off the wrist and it gives you still the feel that you need and the comfort and handling. And then it has that same electronic suite that I mentioned before, between quartering ABS traction control, slide control, wheelie control, the power launch, the quick shift up and down, the engine braking control, and on the S version, as you see here, it also has the electronic suspension that comes standard on this.